How you doing, guys? We're Eddie Messel here. We're in the 10-11 streaming studio. Obviously, it's a late night. We had some late night Big Ten After Dark baseball for the Big Ten tournament out in Omaha. Nebraska walked off by Maryland in the bottom of the 10th. Nick LaRusso hits a solo shot off Shea Shanneman. We're going to bring in 10-11 Sports Director Kevin Suits because he was there today with the game. And there he is, live at the Schwab. Kev, just kind of take us through today. Obviously, a late night. I think it was a packed Husker fan was there. Just kind of take me through it.
Take us through today, Eddie. That's a loaded question, and it could take a lot of rambling to try to wrap this all up. Let's work backwards. Nick LaRusso walks off Nebraska on a full count, 2 strikes in the 10th inning. In the pitch before the game-winning hit, there was a foul ball that Nebraska nearly caught in its own dugout. So Nebraska was inches away from sending this thing to an 11th inning. Instead, the number 3 hole hitter for the Terrapins stays in the batter's box. And once he put the bat on the ball, it was an elevated slider for Shea Shanneman. It went over the left field fence, and it was ball game. As LaRusso rounded third, he had a mob of white jerseys waiting at home plate to celebrate with them. Shanneman just stood there probably in disbelief about 3 feet off the pitcher's mound. And Bryce Matthews, Nebraska's shortstop, where my camera was looking and where the ball landed in left field, he was right in the line of sight. He didn't move. I think Bryce knew it was gone, and the Huskers shell-shocked by one swing of the bat deciding this game. A low-scoring game, but a good game, 2-1. Nebraska loses in 10 innings. The other cliff notes, I guess, Eddie, was Nebraska had scoring opportunities in both the 8th and the 9th. Both of those innings ended in strikeouts for the Huskers. As for the crowd, it was lively. As the game went on, they got louder and rowdier. I'll say that with a wink, if you know what I'm saying, because it was late at night. And there was a lightning delay in there, which allowed for some extracurricular activities for over an hour. I'm not saying that those people that were rowdy were partaking in extracurriculars, but I'm saying they were partaking in extracurriculars. As for the lightning delay, that was bizarre. It happened so abruptly. Nebraska and Maryland were just cruising through this game. They had played almost 6.5 innings in 2 hours, and then all of a sudden, one of the tournament officials ran onto the field and just shooed everybody away. It didn't seem like weather was even an issue at that point in time, but there was lightning detected within an 8-mile radius, so this game went into a delay. There was only a brief shower that passed through here, maybe only 5 minutes. So that was a bit bizarre. That's when the crowd started to get a little bit restless. And then if you back it all the way up, again, we're going in reverse order. Jace Kaminska started for Nebraska, and he was so good on the pitcher's mound for the Huskers. The righty was really dealing, and he kept Maryland guessing. And this is a talented lineup that he was facing. One of his best outings of the season. Kaminska goes 6 innings. He strikes out 5 batters, allows just 1 run. So there you go, Eddie. Wrapped it up what happened today here at the Schwab.
And you touched on something. I think that's a pretty big deal. You touched on the Jace Kaminska having a great day. I mean, just being there. I mean, you saw him live. How hard is it to, especially as a fan or everybody that was there, to watch Kaminska have the day he's having, and knowing that when you go into that deep delay, he's not going to be able to come back on the mound on a day where he might have been able to go that complete game. That's a little bit of a game changer for them.
Yeah, it was a question whether Jace Kaminska was going to come back for that 7th inning anyway. Obviously, the lightning delay made that decision pretty firmly. There was no way he was going to come back after not throwing a pitch for an hour and 20 minutes. But he was really good. And Kaminska located his fastball really well, was down in the zone, and he was mixing in his off-speed really well. And while we're talking about pitching, Shea Shanneman takes the loss for Nebraska. But my goodness, he was great out of the bullpen. Shea went 2 2/3. Allowed just 1 hit. It was the game-winning hit, and he struck out a pair of batters. The first pitch he threw, by the way, when he came out of the bullpen, Shea rolled a ground ball that Nebraska turned into a double play, and it really got the crowd charged up. It was vintage Shea Shanneman, and Maryland's head coach, even after this game, he complimented the Grand Island native and said he was so good. They didn't like facing him. And he said he's going to be happy when Shea Shanneman's not wearing a Nebraska uniform anymore because they've had to deal with him for 5 years. He was very complimentary, and Tip your cap to Maryland's coach. He was very complimentary, not only of Shea, but also the grit Nebraska played with tonight, and then, of course, the fan base.
I was going to say, we were listening to that, and anybody who wants to listen to that whole thing, it'll be a clip on this web article as well that we pushed out. So check that out, because I'm glad you brought that up, because listening to him, as soon as it ended, I told Bill, I was like, that was one of the best press conferences I've ever heard out of a head coach. I mean, he was complimentary on his guys, but as well as Nebraska dropped a Childress quote in there. I mean,
he played at Kansas State.
Yeah.
So he knows all about Nebraska, because when he played, Nebraska and Kansas State were both in the Big 12, so he's familiar with the program. And I wouldn't be surprised if we went back and clocked the press conference. Maryland's head coach might have talked more about Nebraska and the fan base than his own team during that press conference. And I think he's got a lot of respect for Will Bolton. He even said that he knows Nebraska is hurting. The Huskers dropped to 1-1 here at the Big Ten tournament. It's an elimination situation now for the Huskers. A loss tomorrow would end their season. They will face Michigan State, 7 o'clock, right back here in Omaha.
You said it there. Michigan State is the game tomorrow. And again, Nebraska now dropping into that loser's bracket, Kevin. So even if they do beat Michigan State tomorrow, they'll got Maryland again, and they'll have to beat Maryland twice to get to that Big Ten championship game. So obviously, Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, that's why tonight's game was so important. You win this game, you're in the driver's seat, because as you mentioned, assuming Nebraska wins on Friday, or if it would have been Maryland losing tonight, you win on Friday, you have to beat that team twice to make it to the Big Ten championship game. And I'll be honest, there were multiple moments where I felt Nebraska was going to win this game, especially the way Shea Shanneman was pitching. He's got experience pitching deep into games. He's a former starter. I felt like Nebraska could ride him, and he was so good. And I just felt like if Nebraska could manufacture a run and then have Shea just close it down, that they'd come out of this thing with a victory. And that's where, in the press conference, if you go back and watch it, the terms were used abrupt multiple times, because this thing did end so abruptly. Nebraska had the momentum, had the crowd charged up, and Shea was pitching well. And then all of a sudden, one swing of the bat, boom, LaRusso puts it over the fence, and the game was over. Nebraska loses 2-1 on a late night here at the Big Ten tournament.
A late night indeed. Kevin, thank you again. So again, they're going to play again. We're going to let Kevin go and get on his way back here. Kevin, thank you again. He's there with Brett Baker, too, our EP. So thanks to Brett, both of them working super hard tonight. Kevin, thank you. Get home safe tonight. As for us here at the station, we'll roll through the highlights with you guys one more time. We ran through them in the show, so we'll run through them one more time here. Oh. All right. So again, Nebraska, they got off to the early start. They scored the first one. Cole Evans there with the RBI. He gets things going, and again, we talked about Kaminsky. I mean, what a day he had on the mound, but he gives up a run here to tie. That's the one that would tie the game at 1. Then Maryland with the bases loaded. This is where Kaminsky really showed his stuff. I mean, this is what got him out of that big jam that you heard Kevin talking about there earlier. And then this was when the lightning delay happens. And, of course, the big break. We didn't pick back up till 10. And then right after we pick up, Nebraska had a chance in the 7th. 2 guys on. Casey Burnham, he goes down swinging. It was Dylan Carey and Bryce Matthews who both got on there. And Burnham, again, will go down swinging. And Maryland, I mean, credit to them on the mound as well once they came out of the break. And then this is it. This is what did it. Here's what we were talking about. The LaRusso home run. Luke Sartori, you thought he maybe had a chance, but not enough. LaRusso, we're going to let him jog around the bases here. Shanneman, you heard Kevin say, looked like he just in disbelief. Bullpen's running out. LaRusso would wave off the Husker fans, who over 8,000 people in attendance today at the Schwab. So just an unreal ending to the game today. Obviously, Big Ten after dark, really good stuff. The Huskers, they put up a lot of fight against Maryland, who is an NCAA tournament team. Without a doubt, I think even if they lose in the Big Ten championship, if they are to make it that far, I think Maryland has locked themselves in. They've been ranked a majority of this year. So Maryland, really good team in Nebraska. They put up a great fight today. But again, they play Michigan State tomorrow. That game's at 7 p.m. local time. So Michigan State next up, and then again, they have to beat, if they win that game, they move on to Saturday, and they would have to beat Maryland twice to advance to the Big Ten championship, and then they'd play the winner on the other side of that bracket, which right now looks like Iowa is in charge of that side of the bracket. But that's going to do it for us here at the 1011 Now streaming studio. We thank Kevin again, and thank you guys for sticking up with us, and have a good night.